Right, hello everybody and welcome to the stream, the first stream now that I'm back. And hopefully you can hear me. All the dials and indicators say that you can hear me. And I need to start off by apologizing to a good friend of mine. He was supposed to meet me for dinner right now, as a matter of fact. And for some unknown reason, in my head, I was like, it's Thursday, we're meeting for Thursday, today's Tuesday. No, it was meant to be today. It was meant to be today. And why did I want to have dinner with this person? Well, fantastic person, really, really wonderful person, whom I'm hoping you're going to get to meet in the near future, cooking up some wonderful, cool, exciting stuff. At least I think so, anyway. But, yeah, we are going to be moving away from solo play. That's all I can say to you for now. However, big apologies to Brendan there. I was looking forward to it. We're going to go and have steak. It was going to be nice. And then I screwed it up. However, he was a good sport about it. He's like, no, don't worry, you dumb person. All good, all good, all good. So, as you are my witness, I owe him a dinner. All right. Now, I've also been trying to collect my notes, which may or may not have got lost. So, you will have to forgive me if there is some inconsistency in tonight's video. I will do my very best. But my notes were little things like the accents of certain characters. So, I'm like, I have been trying to watch the episode as much as I can whilst prepping and setting everything up. We've got a cool new function which was suggested by one of you in the Discord, and because of the way my screens are set up, I actually can't open up Discord at the moment. But because they suggested this thing, we can now do something which I think is pretty cool. I now have dice rollers, which now roll dice over the screen. So we can all see the dice rolling in. Hopefully you can see them anyway. This is the best I can do at the moment. Now this dice generator, I will share links in the description because it's a really cool idea. And hopefully we can get to the point where we're like, okay, let's support this creator because I think it's a really good idea. It looks really great. And then we can customize the color of our dice, which I think would be phenomenal. Although at the moment they're all rolling low numbers, which, well, actually that's what we kind of need, I think, at the moment. Someone did challenge me to wear my Star Trek uniform, but it's a little bit nippy, so I kind of went with this is kind of my take if I was doing a Star Trek uniform, although I suppose the top would be black. You know, there we go. Things are what they are. Right. We left on a couple of cliffhangers. So I'm definitely going to be trying to pick it up. And if I screw up, just in chat say, hey, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Or that's not what you did last time. So to give you a basic recap, if this is the first stream that you happen to be catching, basic recap, the crew of the USS Plato, whilst conveying our ambassador, a Romulan ambassador, although not an ambassador for the Romulans, but an ambassador who serves with the Romulans, Boran Vramik is traveling with the USS Plato, doing experimental stuff to try and develop anti-Borg weaponry. Now, Vramik is on a mission to do this kind of stuff, but the ship was asked first to please go and check on some unusual gravitational waves that were being detected in the nearby system, which I have subsequently discovered I have lost the name of for now, because my notepad fell apart and some of the notes may have been thrown away, because I'm fairly certain the name of the planet wasn't HMRC Tax. Anyway, we'll get there. So, yes, this is where we are. So the Plato went to go investigate. They discovered this planet covered in what looked to be some kind of radiation. Now, the captain, Captain Aldrin, decided to send down a team led up by the first officer and the ambassador. They left in a shuttle and landed on the planet, although that was not what they were supposed to be doing. They discovered a structure underneath this planet, and that is why they landed, to investigate this structure, because it seemed to be the source of the gravitational waves. Now, once they entered into the structure, the ship in orbit above the planet lost contact with our intrepid away team, and as a result of losing contact, they were about to start initiating scans to try and find our missing folk, but they suddenly had an encounter with a ship that was arriving. Mordecai, thank you for jumping in. Good luck. And we'll chat with some ideas on Discord later. Fantastic. Mordecai edits all of the great GM videos. Big thank you to you for doing all those wonderful jobs on editing the videos, I think. Anyway, thank you for watching. Right, so the planet of inland revenue, says Juniper. Absolutely. Yes, Bobo the otter is the captain's pet. We haven't seen Bobo yet because we haven't really had that on the ship episode yet. Right, so our intrepid heroes have gone inside the structure. The first officer and the chief science officer decided that splitting up would be the best idea. So they went off in one direction. The ambassador and the chief medical officer, Jonathan Bacchus, went off in another direction. And the first officer and the science officer found a portable radiation shield, which could arguably be very useful on a planet covered in radiation. On the other hand, the ambassador and the chief medical officer discovered a strange core that seemed to be kind of radiating all of this gravimetric distortions, and it seemed to be speeding up, covered in ancient runic script. Further to that, in orbit, the USS Plato detected a vessel arriving, a vessel that had a crescent-shaped hull and was very much painted in the style of its owners in an orange tone, which makes it the hull of a Ferengi marauder, or a Ferengi cargo ship, depending on what you want to call it. But it is the Ferengi that have arrived, and they don't look particularly happy. Now, if you recall, this whole thing has been put together using this edition of Star Trek Adventures, the Captain's Log solo role-playing game from Modiphius. Now, Modiphius Entertainment, modiphius.net, all full disclosure, they sent me a copy of this book, but that's about it. They didn't say anything else, and I said, okay, well, I'll run one of these streams, and I've had quite a lot of fun so far, and hopefully you have as well. Now, we are going to finish off this adventure, because as I said, there are some interesting developments coming up, and we are running out of time before these new things need to start. Now, when are they going to start? Probably in July. So we've got a couple of weeks, give or take. But having said that, I do want to wrap up this adventure. So that's what we're going to be aiming to do. Now, the entire adventure hook involved us extraditing a prisoner from a planet, taking them to another planet. It was meant to be a political kind of mission, but at the moment it's feeling much more like a discovery kind of mission. We are learning about this planet, what's generating these gravitational waves, and things along those lines. And so I feel it's important to say that you are responsible for voting. So every now and again, I will put up one of these where I will start a poll. And you then are encouraged, very much encouraged, to answer that poll. So you should see it popping up at some point now in your chat. And you'll see. Did I say starting in July? I meant starting in January. Starting in January. Juniper still on the inland revenue. Yes, the Ferengi are after that. Absolutely. Ferengi went on a wonderful journey of not reimagining, more like reinvention. Really, I can never wrap my head around the fact that they were meant to be the supervillains of the next generation, but the way that they were portrayed and written was as super clowns, super ineffective. So that was turned around in Deep Space Nine, where they were given much more information. They were fleshed out completely, still comic, but in an incredibly meaningful and deep kind of way. I really enjoyed the Ferengi episodes. And of course, Star Trek Voyager had a couple of Ferengi episodes as well. I think it's just one that I can recall, maybe two, which were lovely. So there we go. But you don't have to know anything about Star Trek in order to know what's going on. So let's jump right into it. So that was a poll, an example of a poll. For example, 91% of you said yes, you can see it. 8% said no, you can't see it. So there you are. Vorpal Bite saying, what kind of poll is that? You changed my vote from no to yes. If that's the way you play, don't waste my time. I didn't change anything. Perhaps you clicked somewhere? Geordie Hero says, hello, just recently found this channel. Is it possible to D&D online or solo? Well, you're going to find out, because that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm running this game solo as a psychopath, basically. But your input is important. Your input is absolutely important in running this game. Let us now enter the bridge of the USS Plato. There's even a diagram for you on the screen there. And we have a very concerned captain. I want you to hail that ship. See what's brought them here. We don't want any kind of conflict. The gentle chime and hum of the workstations indicate that the ensign in charge of communications, that would be, let's say, Ensign Geordie. I'm just choosing a name from chat at random. Ensign Geordie nods, presses a few buttons, and says, they're responding, Captain. I don't know where these voices come from. On screen, says the captain. The screen punches up, and immediately we see the large, very formidable features of a daimon, a Ferengi captain, glaring down at our poor Captain Aldrin. We have already staked claim to this planet and to the weapon. You will leave immediately. The captain smiles, and we're going to go into our first roll of the evening, as this is definitely a roll for us to make. As you recall, or maybe you don't recall, the way that we roll for the attributes of the crewman, because only the ambassador is our character, we roll for the crewman itself. And so rolling for the crewman, this is the captain, and this is, I think, without doubt, this is a communications issue. This is something that we need to work through in terms of that kind of line. So I'm going to say we're going to use comms, and probably command would be my guess. Comms and command. So we put those two together, and we have to get an 11 or less on our dice. Now, you tell me, and I'm going to run a poll for it. So this is the first poll of the video as well. In this poll, it's a yes or no. Yes, I use the digital dice, like so. Or no, you randomly put numbers into chat and I randomly pull them out. So in this case, we got one die that was under 11, so that counts as a success. One over, which would count as a failure. But because we've had that one success, we are off to a good start. So let that poll roll. Yes, I roll using the dice. No, you want me to choose numbers from the chat. I'm happy to do either or. This is about us working together. So whilst you are looking at that poll and I'm looking at the numbers for success, I want you in chat also to quickly just give me the name of the daimon. What is the Ferengi's name? With the success, the captain responds, we were not aware that the Ferengi had any kind of claim on this planet. When did you claim this territory? And who else recognizes your sovereignty here? The Ferengi looks back and sneers. It is by the 59th rule of acquisition. We were here first, so it's ours. And we're not giving it back to anyone. The captain hides a smile, knowing exactly how inaccurate the Ferengi was in quoting the rules of acquisition, for that certainly was not Rule 59. However, given the fact that a fully armed ship of this scale could pose a threat to the Plato, and the Plato is not a fighting vessel, nor was this mission ever meant to be, the captain hides her incredulity at the daimon. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Your daimon... The Ferengi, evidently irritated by the captain, or perhaps trying to hide something, sneers back, Methlik! Daimon Methlik! Officially the owner of this planet known as Gon. It is Gon Planet. There is a snigger from one of the ensigns in the back, which the captain cuts off sharply with a glare. Very well, Daimon Methlik, I'm sure we can accommodate something. This planet, as far as we're concerned, is not owned by anyone, but I assure you we are not after any kind of weapon. We were merely scientifically investigating. I do not care what you humans were doing here. It is ours and you will leave now, or I will add your ship to my prize. As that negotiation is going on upstairs, down in the belly of the device on the planet, which the Ferengi have claimed to be a weapon, the first officer and the chief science officer are wandering around with their new portable radiation shield. They have not found anything of significance when their comm badge chirps. Ambassador Vramik to the first officer. We have discovered the core. There is a problem. I suggest that you join us. These are our coordinates. Well, the chief science officer looks down. They're not too far, sir. We could probably get there in 10 minutes. I don't like the sounds of a problem, though. What do you think it could be? As the first officer and the chief science officer hurriedly make their way to the coordinates that have been sent to them by the ambassador looks at the chief medical officer. Are you detecting any increased activity within the core, or any radiation, more importantly? The doctor is running all of the scans they possibly can, but says nothing. This has nothing to do with the fact that I can't remember what voice accent I was doing for the doctor. So if you do remember, or if you can vaguely suggest an accent, I will go with it with absolute joy and glee, because I couldn't actually find a section where the doctor had spoken. So the doctor remains quiet, but shakes his head. He doesn't think that there's going to be any additional radiation at this point. The ambassador, however, glares at the machine, and if I look at the ambassador's focuses, he's got holoprogramming, diplomacy, philosophy, xenoanthropology, Starfleet protocol, and leading by example. He values finding logic, seeking to find himself, resistance is never futile, and the mission comes first. So, he is going to attempt to decipher these writings that are all over this device. Of course, that's the first step. And it doesn't seem as if the tricorder is willing to offer any kind of solution. So in order to decipher it, he's going to have to use insight, which is a 9. And I would say probably science. Insight and science. So that would give us a 12 that he needs to roll under. Now, if I look at the poll, I'm going to end the poll now. 87% of you said yes, use the dice. 13% of you said no, please don't use the dice. So that's absolutely fine. Happy to use the dice for now. And if we want to change our minds later on, you certainly can. Not a problem whatsoever. Here we go. And so we're going to roll 2 dice. We need to get underneath an insight and insight and science that was under an 11, and we've got one. We've got a 9 and we've got a 14. So the 9 is a success, the 14 is not. So we're not getting anything. Jupiter, you are absolutely correct. Make notes of the accents on the character sheet. Well, I have now started an actual book where I'm writing the notes, and books are less likely to get thrown away than notepads that fall apart. I really, I thought I had made notes. That's the whole thing, is I thought I remember writing it all out into a book somewhere, but it's been so long. This is what happens when you get old. Folks, don't get old. Right, so there we are. This is the case. And so the ambassador, by looking at the symbol, starts to recognize commonalities, power levels, regulation flow, etc., etc., etc. Now, if we look at our journey of the chart as it is written, our mission tracker, as they call it, we have now successfully completed the first one. That was the negotiations with the Ferengi and with deciphering of the text. As well, we need one more roll to succeed. So we're going to do 3 successes for each of the ticks, and we're going to do 3 ticks per the mission. So we're now into the body of the mission. We've had our subplot turn up in the form of the Ferengi, and so we can now move wholeheartedly forward. The first officer and the chief science officer arrive, slightly out of breath, as they have been making their way as quickly as they can. What have you discovered, Ambassador? Are we in any kind of danger? Says the first officer. With a very cold but slightly raised eyebrow, the ambassador turns to the plucky first officer and says, if I am reading these displays correctly, and I might be mistaken, I am of the opinion that this device is set to explode due to a failure in... Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I can't entirely work out what this says, but this area here... I beg your pardon. This area here, he says, pointing to a display, and the display has all kinds of schematics, looking like large chambers, several spider out in different directions, all around a central core. Now, several of the spidering out shapes, the legs of the spider, if you will, have all turned a bright green, leaving only 3 behind that have still got a yellow color to them. I'm uncertain as to who built the structure, but if I were to hazard a guess, with my xenoanthropology as my training... Everybody rolls their eyes as he keeps reinforcing the fact that he's had xenoanthropology training. If I were to be a guess, I would say that these 5 chambers are completely saturated. That would indicate the solid green, whereas these 3 remaining chambers have not. They are still functioning, hence the device itself still continuing to operate. If all 3 of those chambers were to reach capacity, I believe that this entire structure would explode, given the fact that it is generating significant gravitational waves suitable enough to annihilate asteroids and to send out significant influence across most of the system. The explosion would without doubt be catastrophic. Quietly, the French first officer takes all of this into consideration. Slowly, she looks over at the chief science officer, who is glumly glaring at the consoles and very quietly nodding, and has to make a roll because that's how the game works. So he is trying to interpret what's going on. I'm going to say that he is going to use computers and engineering, which is also a 12. And so here we go, also a 12. He needs to get under a 12. A 20 and a 12. Now, he met the 12, but that 20, that gives us a mishap. That gives us a mishap. Mishaps are very dangerous things. Mishaps are generate something called a threat. Now, a threat is going to change things altogether. And for threats, I think rolling is the only way to resolve this. We roll a d20, and this will give us a 9. Well, damn it. The game just knows how to work this. The threat is hostile alien entity. So a hostile alien entity, that is what we are currently having. Wait, did I say a 9? It's a 9. Did I just roll a 9? I rolled a 9. I'm sorry, it is not a hostile alien entity. It is a psionic incident. So now we go to the table for psionic incident, and we roll this again. And we get a 17. Psionic incident. Telepathic hallucinations. Isn't that just divine? Wow, telepathic hallucinations. Great stuff. So, poor old Mr. Winkler, who had this, his eyes suddenly glaze over, and a thin film of sweat starts to perspire across his brow, and his hands drop to his sides. He seems lost. Deep thought creases across his face, and he has ceased to function. All of the administrations of the first officer, the ambassador, and the chief medical officer running his tricorder over him seems to avail nothing whatsoever. The ambassador, being the mission must come first type, whilst it is imperative that we discover what has happened to Mr. Winkler, given his training, I would suggest that that is left in the hands of Mr. Bacchus, and that you and I, Commander Navrok, are the ones who attempt to figure out how to remove the stress and the strain that this engine is currently under. The first officer is reluctant, but agrees. This is the only logical course of action, and of course the cold-blooded cold-blooded Romulan, in the ambassador's case, certainly would know better. That gives us our first tick on our track. Interesting. Okay, now we go back into space, where Daimon Methlik is facing down against our captain. Now, because we have things going down in the planet, happening up on the Plato itself, we have a showdown. The captain glares at the Daimon. I assure you, once my crew have been returned from the surface, we will depart the system. But surely you must understand the gravimetric distortions have been increasing in scale and in size. I would warn you that unless you have the means by which to control these things, your own ship might be put at risk. The Ferengi hides his uncomfort at the thought of death through gravimetric destruction poorly when he responds, I do not need your warnings. We know what the weapon is. It is ours. Your crewmen you will have to simply abandon. They are tragic losses. The captain glares at him and takes a sip of a cup of what she's drinking, chat. Apparently it's quite strong. Excuse me. What does the captain drink? Okay. I bet you it's not decaf instant cold coffee. So there you are. The Ferengi refuses to back down, as does the captain. I will not be intimidated by the likes of you. I will not abandon my crew, and if necessary, we will defend ourselves, Daimon Methlik, but I do not feel that that is what we should come to. We should come to some kind of agreement. Can't we just talk this out? Almost instantly, the screen disappears, going blank and replacing with a view of the rather large and intimidating Ferengi Marauder. It does loom over the USS Plato, as it is fairly large. The young ensign at the comms reports, they're not responding to any other hails, I'm afraid, Captain. At that point, the Vulcan, I tell a lie, at that point, Ensign Andrews responds, Captain, I'm reading weapons buildup, I mean, an energy buildup in their weapon systems. I think they're targeting us. Muttering a curse under her breath and putting down her putting down her cup of glühwein, but not glühwein that is alcoholic. It's non-alcoholic glühwein because apparently it's Oktoberfest on the ship, and that's what they're celebrating, or were celebrating before this adventure started. So non-alcoholic glühwein is put down. As she takes her seat, she immediately orders, "Red alert, we're not going to get taken down by some upstart Ferengi claim jumper. But at the same time, if they fire at us, you will target their weapon systems first. I want that clear." It's at that point that Tactical Officer Jasper Moribund responds, "Quite clear. I shall destroy them only if there is no recourse, Captain." And the captain gives him one of her looks that she seems to give most of her crew before settling in. The Ferengi ship starts to maneuver, and so does the USS Plato, as they swing around one another, trying to position themselves as best they can. The Ferengi ship seems to be trying to get closer to the planet's surface, and the USS Plato is attempting to stop that from happening. That means that poor old Ensign Andrews at the helm is going to have to make some pretty corrective measures to do that. That is going to require him to use, I would say, sensors to determine where they're going and con to determine where they should go. So that gives them a wonderful 13. A wonderful 13. Now, there are, of course, aquatic creatures aboard the ship. Aquatic Zindi, for example. Remember those creatures from Enterprise. And they are helping in the ways that they can. However, poor old Ensign Andrews crumbles under the pressure. And so the USS Plato is a little bit slow to swing into action, and instead of positioning herself between the planet and the Ferengi ship in an error that can only be described as a rookie mistake, the Plato ends up on the other side of the Ferengi ship, putting it in between the planet and the Plato. As soon as that happens, the Ferengi become immediately aware of the opportunity that they have. And as a result, they all say farewell to K-Cool, who is going to go and recharge their computer and phone. Thank you for joining us. Meanwhile, the Ferengi have decided that they are going to do something much different. There is profit to be made here, after all. As a result, the Ferengi are going to throw up a disruption field where they're going to be jamming all frequencies and sensors down onto the planet's surface. Now, they're not necessarily aware that the USS Plato can't scan the planet's surface to begin with. But what will that mean for our intrepid crew? Well, we're going to find out shortly. What our team down on the surface are doing, we've got the doctor desperately trying to figure out what is wrong with our young science officer who is having hallucinations. So in chat, I would love you to please give me some suggestions for what hallucinations young Winkler is currently struggling and suffering through. Whilst that is happening, our ambassador and the first officer are going to attempt to try and release some of the pressure on these different tubules. Unfortunately, the only way that I can see the pressure to be released is by generating a gravimetric wave. These arms, I believe, act as power storage chambers. The only way to release the power stored in them is to discharge the weapon, or whatever this device was. I'm not convinced it was meant to be a weapon, as a matter of fact. It doesn't strike me as being particularly accurate. It appears to affect the entire area around the planet. This would be very ineffective as a directed weapon, perhaps. The first officer nods, and she says, "All right, tell me what I have to do. This is not my field of expertise. What do you recommend?" Looking around, the ambassador quickly realizes that the chambers need to be armed, they need to be primed, which requires someone to run from one chamber to the next. Ordinarily, the weapon or the device is probably operated by a large crew of individuals. We will need to arm each of the chambers. Wrong person. We will need to arm each of the chambers. There is no apparent sequence as to the arming, simply that we must do it. There are 3 on that side of the station, and there are 3 on this side of the station. I suggest we take 1 each." The first officer balks at the idea of splitting the party 3 ways, leaving Bacchus and Winkler behind, but she really has no choice in that matter. Grabbing her gear, she makes her way as fast as she can with the portable shield generator, the radiation shield generator, I should say, in hand, as does the ambassador in the opposite direction. So while she is going off to go and try and open up these valves, or prime these charges, I should say, so is the ambassador, leaving behind our doctor. Now, the young Winkler finds himself in a strange place. There are fingers everywhere. Fingers growing out of the consoles, fingers growing out of the floor, gently stroking at his boots, fingers growing from the ceiling, reaching out towards him. Fingers everywhere. This is very unsettling. And as he takes a step back in shock and surprise, there is a sickening crunch from under his boot as he steps upon more fingers. The fingers retract in pain. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry," he keeps saying as he stumbles about blindly, trying to find anything or any surface not covered in fingers. The fingers all seem to stiffen and form straight columns, as if trying to convey a sense of hatred and distrust. As the fingers do this, slowly swimming through the fingers, as if they are some kind of aquatic seaweed, swimming through these fingers are fish-like beings, long tails full of gold and red and blue and green and indigo and all of the hues of the rainbow, ending in a vaguely humanoid-like shape. They look nothing like the aquatic Zindi aboard the USS Plato. This is nothing that Winkler has ever seen before. As they swim towards him, their pleasant smiles suddenly open up into a mouth full of teeth as they grin in cannibalistic glee. Winkler screams in Irish, "Ah!" and runs as fast as he possibly can down the corridor, crunching over all those fingers as these strange fish-like creatures follow him. This is definitely taking us into a roll to see what happens to poor old Mr. Winkler. As he pounds down the corridor, terrified, fingers grabbing at his jacket, pulling at his hair, gently stroking across his cheeks, he has to make a weapons security check, which is also an 11, a very common number on this ship. And so he dashes, and gets a success. So he manages to throw himself around a corner just in the nick of time. And as he lands on what appears to be a hard metal surface, the fingers and the merfolk seem to disappear, if ever so briefly. What is going on? What is going on? He keeps repeating over and over and over again. Outside of Mr. Winkler, Mr. Bacchus has been using his medical tricorder, desperate to figure out what is wrong with him. He's noticed several rather curious things. The sweat upon his brow is definitely sweat, and it has been induced because his body believes that he is running, or at least is under some kind of duress. The heartbeat is erratic. The fingers are reddened. There is a stertorous breathing to his nature. This is not something that a person in a coma would be experiencing. The doctor is going to make a quick check using, let's say, computers. Let's say sensors, as he tries to determine what's going on, and medicine, which gives us a 15. This is pretty good, as a matter of fact. On a 15, almost a double success, but unfortunately not a single success. And so our doctor has figured out that the best way to get Mr. Winkler back is to try and get his body to realize that he's not in the situation that he's in. And so he fills up a hyperspray from his medical kit with that wonderful chemical called improvaline. 5 cc's of improvaline administered directly to the carotid artery in the neck, And Mr. Winkler suddenly wakes up as his body realizes that he is no longer in this bizarre finger-filled passageway with piranha-like merfolk. Thanks, chat. That was wonderful. Fingers everywhere. Anyway, he wakes up in a cold sweat, looks into the doctor's eyes and says, "What is going on?" and promptly passes out from fatigue. The first officer has arrived at the first locking station that she needs to get through, and looking at the system, she is not yet completely familiar with how all of this is supposed to work, and as a result, I'm going to get her to tap her comm badge and ask the ambassador, because this is the most logical sense, "Ambassador, I've arrived at the charging station. What is it that I should do to put the device into firing mode?" The ambassador, in turn, has also arrived at his charging station, having not failed anything, luckily so far, and he scans over the runes, which he can barely decipher, but he puts two and two together, maybe. Let's do another roll. This would be, I would say, insight. No, I would say this would be reasoning, now that he knows vaguely what the glyphs and things mean. With reason and security. So a 12. He tries to figure out what's going on. Oh, not 40. We don't want 40. We don't want any 12s. Right, 2d12. Here we go. Double success! That means that we get a success. Now, where are we? Right, momentum. That means we gain momentum. We have a double success, which is wonderful. And so I'm going to roll the d20 again. And here we go. This would be an 11, which is new technology. So he discovers something new about this entire system. On a 10, new technology is... And these are just tables, reference tables. Lots and lots of reference tables in this book. Oh, absolutely wonderful. It's a Federation Scientist Overseas upgrade. So how this works exactly is in the following way. The ambassador pauses for a moment and then laughs. I was so foolish not to see this. First officer, I believe that these runes are a form of very ancient Vulcan. This device, I believe, was built by the ancestors of both my species and the Vulcans. Perhaps they got lost on their way to Romulus, or perhaps they never intended to head in that direction. Whatever the purpose is, I knew these runes were vaguely familiar, but now I am convinced I know exactly what is going on. In order to charge the weapon, you simply need to initiate the charge by lowering the large T-barred lever on the right-hand side. Bring that from the upper position into the lower position, then there is a dial immediately to its left. Rotate that 180 degrees, no more, no less. Once you have done that, simply press the dial in. That should lock it in place, and then we need to move on to the other. It's as simple as that, and as soon as we can do that, the sooner we can charge the entire weapon. With that series of instructions in place, the first officer and the ambassador make short work of priming everything, which means that we move into our next category on this track, because that was 3 rolls. We move into our next track category here. And that means that we have to go back up into space. The Plato, having been outmaneuvered by Daimon Methlic's ship. What is the name of Daimon Methlic's ship, by the way, folks? Just chuck your ideas into chat. Daimon Methlic's ship, the Ferengi Marauder, or the Ferengi warship, known as the what, exactly? The Plato and the Ferengi ship stare at one another, glaring and threatening to attack, threatening to fire upon one another. Now, there is an entire section on ship combat in the book, which I confess I got confused on. I was a little bit confused as to exactly how it works, so you will have to forgive me here, as basically there's a whole flowchart, wonderful thing. There's a whole flowchart that one can look through, and so I'll give you an example, right? There's all this kind of stuff in here, and you go, well, okay, this happens and that happens. I think it's way too complicated. Right. Choose a ship, perform a task, which would be to hit or to fail. And then successes equals a hit to the opposition, failure means fail to the opposition. And then you take damage according to that. Resolve, defeat, check for critical damage on page 215. That's what we're going to do. Bear with. And we've got a track of your hits is scale +2, and the opposition hits is the scale. So our scale +2, and our ship scale. Did we write down our ship scale like good people? We did. So it's 4 + 2. So that gives us 6 potential hits that we can take. And the Ferengi ship, oh my goodness. This is where I always advocate having multiple people playing in your game, because then quite literally multiple folks sit around the table and can look up all of these numbers whilst you're playing. I don't think they actually have Ferengi statistics for Ferengi ships and things in here. So I'm going to go for something that is as close as I can find it to what we are sailing around in. I'm going to say that a Ferengi ship is probably equal to in power, and you guys are welcome to disagree with me, but I would say a Ferengi ship is probably equal in power to a Cheyenne class ship. Or perhaps an Excelsior class, but I would say a Cheyenne class. That's what I'm going to say that the Ferengi Marauder, this Marauder anyway, is the equivalency of. And so she is scale 4, so she has 4 hits. So to fire initially, the Ferengi are firing first because, well, we're the Federation and we let them attack. As a result, I'm looking for the names. The Golden Moon. We're going to go with the Golden Moon. I do like that one. The Charhog looks great. The Debit, the Dubious, the Golden Moon. The Rippled Moose is really good. Yes, I think we're going to go with Golden Moon is what it would be. So Golden Moon it is. Golden Moon is going to use, to make their attack, they're going to use weapons, and they're going to use security. So their weapons is 9, their security is 2, which puts them on an 11. So they get to roll against us twice. 1 hit and 1 critical hit to them. Ha ha! Something goes wrong with them. I'm just going to put a mark there. So they take a hit, but they also deal a hit to us. Now, as I said, we've got 6 hits. So now we've got 5 hits left to our hull. Everything rocks around. And we have to check page 215 for critical damage. Check for critical damage. Flowchart. What system was hit? Reroll if rolled system has critical damage. What system was hit? Okay, right, good. So what system was hit? Where are we? Your ship in gameplay. Bear with me. Your ship was hit critical damage. Weapons plus security is your roll, so that's exactly what we did. Right. Where does it show us critical hits? Well, wouldn't you know? We don't have it anywhere there, so that's fine. I'm just going to say that there is no critical hit in this particular combat. We will continue as normal because, well, you know, it's time for us to move on. So we've got 1 hit. The Ferengi have got 1 hit. That was their attack. Immediately as the ship rocks and there is slight sparking because it's only shield damage at this present moment in time, Captain Aldrin shouts, "Bring us about and destroy the weapon systems, Mr. Moribund. I do not want them firing another shot at us. Is that clear?" "Very clear, Captain. Firing now." And so the Plato gets to fire, and the Plato's weapons are 9 and security is 2. So that's a whopping 11 as well. These ships are pretty equally matched. Moribund gets one hit on the Ferengi, but nothing else much happens. The Ferengi return fire. I want nothing left of that ship except salvage. And so we roll 2 attack dice for the Golden Moon, and it gets 2 successes, which means it gains momentum. And with momentum, you can add a hit, remove a hit, re-roll, create an advantage, or cancel a threat. So we're going to remove a hit from the Ferengi vessel, and we are adding 2 hits to our own. Captain! Who's saying this? This is the Captain. The shields are collapsing. They have simply outmaneuvered us. We are at 70% hull. I have no choice. Try and hail them again. Let's figure out what's going on here. We need to talk to them. In the meantime, Mr. Andrews, I want you to do something better than what you did before. Plot us a course to get us the hell out of here in case they don't respond. Meanwhile, the poor old communications officer, I'm not getting anything back from them. Wait, we are being hailed, Captain. We're definitely being hailed. Shall I put them on screen? Are you kidding? Put them on screen now. A gloating Ferengi face suddenly appears on screen. I tell you, it was fingers. Fingers everywhere. And these strange fish-like creatures were trying to eat me. The doctor solemnly nods. Until I figure out what his accent is from last month's video, he will nod silently. As he is nodding silently, the first officer and our ambassador come returning from having charged and primed all of the weapons or the devices systems. But I have to ask you now, what happens if we discharge this weapon? The ambassador takes a moment to consider this question. I am afraid that if we do that, there will be a gravitational wave significantly larger than there has been before. As we do not know the function or the purpose of this wave, it will simply be a blind firing of the weapon. I believe that this will release at least 50% of the tension currently built up, and as a result that should reduce any further gravitational waves that will need to be discharged. But if we discharge a gravitational wave, will that wave not impact upon the Plato? Yes, you do have a point. The Plato will receive a significant battering. If they're not prepared for it, there is a significant risk that the Plato will take damage. There must be some kind of way in which we can communicate with the Plato before we discharge this weapon. I think it would be reckless of us to do anything other. Whilst I applaud your efforts, the ambassador says, he points to the display screen. 2 of the chambers that were yellow have now gone green. We do not have the luxury of significant amounts of time. I strongly suggest that if you do try to contact the Plato, that they should move as far away as possible, perhaps even leaving the system. This is the only way that I can see for them to be protected. The first officer, acting quickly, grabs Mr. Winkler, who's still talking about fingers. I will attempt to get to the shuttle and see if we can boost the signal in order to contact the Plato. Give me as much time as you possibly can. The ambassador puts his hand upon her shoulder. I'm afraid that simply is not possible. You see, the gravitational waves will ripple over the surface of this planet just as surely as they will ripple through space. If you are inside the shuttle and you are unprotected, I'm afraid I cannot vouch for the safety of the shuttle or yourselves. I'm afraid it would be impossible. The first officer swallows, realizing the severity of what the ambassador is saying. Either the Plato suffers a gravimetric impact that it has as yet not experienced, and the alternative is that she sacrifices herself while sending up the signal to the Plato. It is not a difficult one for Nanrock, our first officer. Very well. I will attempt to communicate with the Plato from the shuttle. Science Officer Winkler, you are to remain here with the ambassador and buy me as much time as possible. See if there is some kind of release valve or something, anything. With that, she gives a nod to the ambassador, who will not attempt to stop her. Her choice of action is the most logical route, the needs of the many, after all, and watches as the first officer runs down the passageway as fast as she can. She has taken the portable radiation shield generator with her, just in case, although this is not any kind of radiation that the shield would be protecting against. The ambassador turns to the chief science officer. See if you can figure out if there is some kind of emergency release valve. Or perhaps see if you can figure out what exactly these gravitational waves were designed for. I can't possibly believe that my ancestors would have built a device of such destructive power that would destroy a system that they are currently inhabiting. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. Winkler nods. I'd see what I can do. But, Ambassador, between you and me, if you find any fingers, you'll let me know, right? Fingers? Why would you talk about fingers? Oh, I suppose no one's told you. Well, whilst I was working the controls, everyone else sort of disappeared, and there was a replacing of everything with fingers, and then these weird kind of fish. The ambassador steps back and is going to make a roll, because we all know of the capacity of the Vulcans and their weird and wonderful ways. He is going to make an insight plus medicine check, I believe. That would be an 11. I wonder if any of you know where I'm going with this. A 9 and a 17, that's one success. That is very curious, and it could be indicative of something. I wonder, have you ever heard of the Stone of Gaul? Mr. Winkler looks at him, and I'm only going to give him a single die. No, I can't say that I have. Is that some sort of Romulan device? The ambassador counters. No, not a Romulan device. It was a Vulcan device, built before the time of the teachings of Serac. This device was intended to amplify the telepathic capabilities of those who held the stone. There was some report that I remember reading that Captain Picard participated in, where the Stone of Gaul was discovered, only to be destroyed subsequently. Part of those readings were some very strange types of radiation. Given the limited knowledge that the report contained, I suspect that there wasn't much time to study the device in its entirety, and that it was activated perhaps foolishly. I wonder if these gravimetric distortions have anything to do with that. I mean, leave it to the ancestors to create some kind of telepathic enhancing device. Perhaps the gravitational waves are a byproduct of this entire thing. I shall have to explore this more, but for now, see if you can find anything at all that might collaborate this crazy notion that I'm currently experiencing. Up in the sky, our wonderful captain glares at the daimon. Your ship is damaged, Captain. Generously, I will allow you and 5 of you crew members to buy one of your shuttles from me at good rates and leave the system. The rest of your crew and your ship are now mine by right of conquest. Rule of acquisition number 305. Excuse me. The captain smiles. Damon, I would hate to impose upon your magnanimity in this... I'm not the first officer. Damon, I would hate to impose upon your magnanimity in this matter, and whilst you are offering very generous rates, I'm going to have to decline you on that one. You see, we're just not for sale. And whilst you might think we're damaged, that's what we want you to think, she says, channeling her inner Kirk. This will require quite a feat of, smarts, I would say. And as a result, this would be, I think, a communications check for the captain. Comms of 9. And in this case, I want to say command of 2. So again, we find ourselves sitting on that impressive number of 11. Statistically, not so great. So here we go. An 11 for her to succeed at... Oh, no! A complete failure. That generates threat. Oh my goodness, that is not what we wanted. That is not what we wanted. All right. You know what? I'm not going to actually roll on the threat table because we know exactly what is going to happen. The Ferengi says, "Ow! Well, if you want us to think that you are severely damaged, then you won't mind if we do this. Fire! Fire!" The great golden moon swings around, pointing that sickle-shaped prow directly at the Plato. The captain realizes that what she was attempting to do, whilst it might have worked once in a hollow program, is not going to work here. The Ferengi ship fires twice, and I think we established that the Ferengi ship was using, and I've got my notes here. I need post-it notes, damn it. The Ferengi ship is using weapons and security, putting it on the unimpressive number of 11. It fires those great big golden disruptors, hitting once onto the poor hull of the Plato. There are sparks, there are explosions, someone gets thrown to the left, someone rolls to the right, a console erupts into flames, a plasma conduit vaporizes a section of bulkhead, emergency force fields appear all over the ship as a hull breach on deck 12 threatens to destroy everybody on that level. Water starts gushing from the side of the USS Plato as damage is dealt of a significant nature to this poor ship. The captain is thrown about, manages to stagger to her feet, a cut across her brow. "Get us out of here, Mr. Andrews. I don't care where. Just get us the hell out of here." The Plato, desperate to make a jump, is going to go anywhere. That is going to take engines and I would say con. So engines and con, that would put him on a 12. Can Mr. Andrews do it? Oh, no! Okay. He is punching in. Engines are not responding. I've got nothing. The helm's gone dead, Captain. The captain slams her hand against her comm badge. Gat, we need warp power right now. We gotta get out of here. Give me something. Captain, we are under extreme duress. I will see what I can do. This will be an engines plus engineering. That's a 13. No, it'll be structure plus engineering. That's a 13. Come on. We need something. Okay. All right. That will mitigate the threat that we got from the last one. And that will give us, that'll give us momentum, which eliminates the threat from the previous roll. Captain, I can give you warp power for perhaps 5 seconds. I don't care. Do it now. But Captain, I said now. Okay. The ship suddenly bursts into warp speed. The Ferengi ship, like a great big crab, slowly circles the space where the Plato once had been, and where now large gouts of plasma-infused water slowly gloop and gobble and float around in the void left by the ship. On the deck of the Ferengi ship, Daimon Methlik turns around. "I am the greatest daimon ever to have lived." One of his crew members points out, "But sir, you lost the ship. It's gone." The daimon shoots him one of those particularly vicious smiles, showing off all of his twisted and sharpened teeth. "No, they have run away. This means that whatever's on the planet is all ours. Prepare a landing party. I want to know exactly how much profit we've made." Well, on that note, if I go down to our mission tracker, we had so many rolls. That means we have completed the middle chapter of our story and now need to move into the last 3. What will it be? What will it be? It will be next week. For when we return, we shall continue the escapades of the very badly damaged USS Plato, the first officer having rushed to the shuttle in a desperate attempt to warn the Plato away, and everything now set and charged to discharge and release this gravimetric wave of significant note. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon, or this evening, or this morning, or this midday, whatever it happens to be, for wherever you happen to be in the world. It was a lot of fun having your company. And do let me know in the comments of this video or on Discord. You can find me there as well. Head on over to discord.gg/greatgm. And I will happily receive comments about your thoughts of using this dice generator, things along those lines. And we'll take it from there. Until next time, I want to wish you and yours long life and prosperity.